Grandma, help me.
I was stunned by the sight of my 7-year-old granddaughter seeking help while visiting my son's house. She was chained up inside the room. My grandchild's body, which I hugged in a hurry, was skinny. "Where are your parents?"
They locked me up and went on a trip.
Not only that, but she hadn't eaten or drunk anything for 3 days. I gave her tea from my bag and put caramel in her mouth, then called an ambulance in a hurry. My granddaughter closed her eyes in relief in my arms. I can't forgive them for doing such a horrible thing. I decided to send my son and daughter-in-law to hell in place of my helpless granddaughter. I'm Nancy, 62 years old. I work part-time at a 24-hour supermarket about 4 days a week. I live alone because my husband passed away 5 years ago. I'm not struggling to make ends meet because my husband left me some assets, but I wanted to work while I'm still healthy. My son Michael got married 8 years ago and lives in a house about 30 minutes away. My daughter Olivia got married 6 years ago and moved to the neighboring state, but I felt relieved because we could meet if we wanted to. Some people say that living alone is lonely, but it's free and easy. However, there was one thing that worried me. It was about my son's family. My son's wife, Sophia, is 10 years younger than my son. I was worried because she was only 18 when they got married. She met my son while working part-time at the convenience store where he worked as a manager. I was surprised when she came to greet me for the first time.
"Oh, you're Michael's mom? You're pretty young. I'm Sophia. Nice to meet you."
Huh? Pretty young? Oh. Nice to meet you. I'm Nancy.
You seem like a nice person. By the way, can I have some pocket money? Can you ask to give me some, Michael?
I felt uneasy seeing Sophia's flashy makeup and childish behavior. Not only that, but she couldn't speak politely and even begged for money. I couldn't stand watching my son fawn over his young girlfriend either.
Hey! Mom, isn't Sophia cute? Treat her like your real daughter and give her some pocket money.
I wanted to hit my son's head for his ridiculous comment, but I held back because Sophia was there. "I'm sorry. I don't have any cash on me right now."
You're stingy.
Sophia clicked her tongue and pouted like a child. To be honest, I wanted to oppose their marriage because of this situation, but I had to accept it because Sophia was already pregnant with Michael's child. I thought that even though Sophia was young, she would become a little more responsible once she became a mother, but my expectations were dashed. After getting married, my daughter-in-law started giving me various reasons such as severe morning sickness and feeling heavy to ask me to do things for her.
Hey, Nancy. I'm feeling nauseous, so can you go shopping and make dinner? I want steak.
You're feeling nauseous, but you want to eat meat?
Huh? Oh, it's for Michael. I'll only eat a little. Oh, and if you could buy some ice cream, that would be great.
I don't know what she thinks of me. I wanted to complain, but I didn't have any words to say to her ridiculous requests. In addition, Sophia asked me for some money because my son's income was low and they couldn't live a satisfactory life. I gave her about $350 every month. When I consulted with Michael, he said this.
Yeah, that's right. The store's business has been bad lately, so my salary has decreased. I appreciate your monthly support. Thanks, Mom. In return, we'll take care of you in your old age.
I didn't care about the old age talk, But it was true that my son and daughter-in-law were struggling financially, just as Sophia had said. It must be difficult for Sophia to work with her pregnant body. Although the $350 was my part-time job salary, I had no choice. We're family, so we have to help each other when we're in trouble, right? Sophia's parents lived far away, and she was still young. I thought that way and accepted her requests. However, my feelings didn't get through to them. I had no idea that my son and daughter-in-law would cause such an incident at that time. After my exchange with my selfish daughter-in-law, I became more and more frustrated. However, Sophia's pregnancy went smoothly, and she gave birth to a cute baby girl. Her name was Mia. Sophia, you did a great job. She's such a cute little girl, I said to Sophia, who had just given birth. But I was surprised by her unexpected response.
Huh? She's not cute at all. She doesn't look like me. Her eyes are small, she's ugly, and she looks just like you, Nancy.
I couldn't believe my ears. How could she say such a thing about her own child? Her face is a little swollen right now because she was just born, but the swelling will go down soon. She has beautiful features and looks like you, Sophia.
Hey. Old lady. Are you saying that this ugly baby looks like me?
I was shocked when my daughter-in-law suddenly got angry. Then, my son started to agree with her.
Yeah, she does look like Mom. I wish she looked more like beautiful Sophia.
I was furious with their comments, but I could only hope that Sophia's emotions were unstable because she had just given birth and that she would eventually come to appreciate the baby's cuteness. Sophia continued to ask me to do things for her, perhaps because Mia was a handful. Meanwhile, my granddaughter grew up pure and healthy and began speaking at the age of 2.
Grandma, I love you.
I remember being so happy that I cried when she said that. Grandma loves Mia too. You're a precious little treasure. Mia was pure and obedient, so she seemed like an easy child to raise from my perspective. However, Sophia scolded the young Mia everything, giving in to her own emotions.
Ugh, be quiet. Stop crying. Can't you hear the TV?
Sophia, maybe Mia is crying because she wants to be comforted by her mom. Why don't you play with her?
Humph. She's my child, so don't tell me what to do. You old hag.
Sophia raised her voice and spat on me while turning up the volume on the TV. I was concerned about her lack of proper parenting, so I took care of my granddaughter at my son's house on my days off and after work. However, Sophia began to look at me with a nasty expression, and it became more and more obvious. When Mia turned 4 and became less of a handful, Sophia began to avoid me. One day, I visited my son's house with some delicious sweets as a souvenir and tried to feed them to Mia. However, no one answered the intercom, so I pressed the button several times. Suddenly, the door opened, and Sophia came out with a bright red face, furious.
You're so annoying. Can't you tell that you're being avoided?
Ha! Do you hate me coming here?
It's because of you that Mia is closer to you than me. You're a nuisance.
To my surprise, Michael was behind Sophia. He had also been avoiding me.
Mom, stop bullying Sophia. Don't you feel sorry for her? Don't come here anymore.
But what about Mia?
We're here for her, so you don't need to worry.
I was worried about my granddaughter. but I couldn't argue with her parents. I had no choice but to give up visiting my son's house. Michael, despite refusing my visits, made a brazen request.
Hey, I'm short on living expenses. Can you keep sending me money every month?
I thought that he wanted to use the money to buy delicious food and beautiful clothes for Mia. I thought it would be used for Mia's sake, even though I couldn't be with her, so I continued to send money. However, looking back now, I should have kept visiting my son's house no matter how much he disliked it. If I had done that, things wouldn't have turned out like this. When Mia turned 7, a terrible incident occurred. I sometimes had to go to work before 5 a.m., and when I passed by my son's house, the lights were on for 3 consecutive days, even though it was usually an unoccupied time. I became suspicious and visited my son's house the next day. When I opened the front door, an abnormal scene unfolded before me.
Grandma, help me.
Mia cried in tears. She was chained to a pillar in the living room. There was no heating in the room, and she was shivering from the cold. When I hugged her in a hurry, my granddaughter's body was skinny. She had lost a lot of weight since I last saw her. Her face was pale, and she had no color in her cheeks. "Where are your parents?"
They locked me up and went on a trip.
My granddaughter replied. Not only that, but she hadn't eaten or drunk anything for 3 days. I searched my bag in a hurry and gave her a bottle of tea to drink and put caramel in her mouth. Then I called an ambulance in a hurry. Mia closed her eyes in relief in my arms. I can't forgive them for doing such a horrible thing. I accompanied her to the hospital, but I couldn't get in touch with my son and daughter-in-law on my phone. My granddaughter's life was saved, but her nutritional status was quite poor, so she had to be hospitalized. I was worried, and then an even more terrible situation arose. After the hospital reported the incident to the police, I was questioned by a detective who accused me in a strong tone.
Did you cause your granddaughter to suffer like this?
I explained desperately. No, I lived separately and happened to find her. I was finally released 2 hours later. After that, I contacted my daughter Olivia, and she and her husband rushed over from the neighboring state by car. I entrusted my granddaughter, whose condition had stabilized, to my daughter and son-in-law and returned to my son's house by taxi. When I investigated, I found a travel schedule on my son's desk, and I learned that he would return home the next night. When I asked the neighbors around my son's house, I discovered some surprising facts. I went back to the hospital again, discussed with my daughter and her husband about future measures, and made a bold decision. The next evening, when my son and daughter-in-law returned home, I left the hospital where my granddaughter was being treated and visited my son's house. When my daughter-in-law opened the door, she frowned and crossed her arms.
What are you doing here? I'm busy, so go home,
she said rudely. Although I was almost broken by her impolite words, I couldn't back down now. I came to see Mia. Please let me see her. Sophia clicked her tongue.
Ugh.
She lied that Mia was with a friend. That's strange. Mia was supposed to be chained up here. You didn't even look for her when she disappeared? I showed them a photo of Mia when I found her. My son and daughter-in-law looked at each other with a darn it expression. Why did you treat your lovely daughter like this? Are you still parents? Mia was shivering from the cold and hadn't eaten anything. However, my son and daughter-in-law raised their voices and became defiant.
It's Mia's fault. We're raising her with love, but she's rebellious.
If we don't chain her up, she'll destroy everything in the house. We have no choice.
Sophia lied to make Mia the bad guy. They showed no signs of remorse. You two went out and played together until late at night and left Mia alone. How can you say that?
Sometimes I have to work late. Don't say weird things.
I know everything. You two are becoming famous in the neighborhood.
Huh?
I went around asking the neighbors to find out about my son and daughter-in-law's situation. Since I visited frequently when Mia was young, I knew many people in the neighborhood. Everyone was worried about my granddaughter and told me what they knew. Mia was once alone in a nearby park until late at night, and it seems that the house was locked. In the middle of a freezing winter, a neighbor who couldn't bear to see her in tattered clothes let her into their house and took care of her. Every night, my son and daughter-in-law returned home late, and they were seen playing at casinos and bars. Everyone in the neighborhood is saying that we have to do something about Mia's situation.
But if we give her the key, she'll destroy everything in the house.
That's not true, is it? You locked her up because you didn't want her to eat anything when she was hungry, right? Poor Mia's body is so skinny because she's not getting enough nutrition. I actually heard from Mia herself at the hospital. One day, she was waiting for her parents to come home late and became so hungry that she couldn't stand it, so she ate a cake from the refrigerator. However, it turned out to be Sophia's, and my daughter-in-law was furious. After that, they didn't give Mia the key and left her outside. When Sophia heard my story, she glared at me.
I can't think of Mia as cute because she looks like an old hag like you. If Mia is so important to you, I'll give her to you.
I was speechless at her ridiculous statement. Mia has been diagnosed with poor nutrition and is hospitalized. My support money wasn't for Mia, but for your own entertainment.
Humph. Children's money belongs to their parents. We can use it however we want. Don't be stingy.
Leaving a child unattended without raising them properly is a crime. Besides, the police have already been notified. My son and daughter-in-law's faces changed color for a moment when they heard the word police, but they immediately retorted.
It's not a crime. If we say that Mia is picky, no one will know that we're not feeding her even though she's skinny. Besides, the neighbors' stories are just rumors and aren't evidence.
They smirked triumphantly and said, "You don't even know that?" I recorded your statements just now. In addition, there is a person who testified more clearly than the photo of Mia chained up and the hospital diagnosis.
Who?
It was actually my granddaughter Mia who testified. I was almost arrested because I was suspected, but thanks to Mia, the misunderstanding was cleared up.
It wasn't Grandma who caused me to suffer like this. It was Mom and Dad.
It became clear that my son and daughter-in-law were at fault. My son and daughter-in-law lost their escape route and began to panic.
Wait a minute. Hey, can you tell the police that it was you who chained her up? That way, we'll be saved.
That's right. You're Michael's parent, aren't you? Parents are supposed to protect their children. Help us.
I was disgusted by their selfishness. I don't want to hear that from you. Who treated your own child so badly? I'll stop being Michael's parent from today.
What? Mom, won't you help me? Is it okay to do that and not see Mia?
I won't give Mia to you.
What?
I told Michael that I was cutting ties with him and that he had to leave the house where he and his wife lived. Actually, the house they lived in was my family's home, and I had lent it to them under my name.
I don't have any money, so I can't be kicked out. Please help me.
Michael was clinging to me and begging for forgiveness, but I coldly told him, "You're apologizing to the wrong person. Besides, Mia said she doesn't want to see you anymore. It's sad when a child gives up on their parents." I held back my tears, thinking of my granddaughter's feelings. I won't cry in front of these people. The police arrived at that moment. I had already informed the police of the time when my son and daughter-in-law would return home. They were taken away while crying and screaming, and I watched them coldly. After the police investigation, they were found guilty of high malice. The rumors spread throughout the neighborhood and were widely reported on TV. My son's name and face were exposed to the public, and he lost his job and his life fell apart. Now he lives on the streets. Sophia disappeared, but I heard rumors that she was working for daily wages in the city at night. Mia was taken in by me, and my son and daughter-in-law were sued for $100,000 in compensation and child support for Mia. I sold the house I had lent to my son and my own house, and bought a condominium near my daughter's house and moved in with my granddaughter. My childless daughter and her husband love Mia. I hope these peaceful and happy days will continue forever.
How was this story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.
Grandpa says he has something to tell you.
During the funeral of my husband, who had taken his own life, my 4-year-old granddaughter pointed at his portrait and shouted those words. Startled, I grasped her hand and tried to take her to a waiting room. Immediately, my son-in-law stopped me.
The service is starting. We can talk later.
Knowing about my granddaughter's mysterious power, he looked pale. I bit my lip and stared at my husband's portrait. You have something to tell me, don't you? At that moment, I decided to uncover the truth, clenching my fist with resolve. I'm Helen, a 63-year-old housewife. I've been married to William, who is older than me and a company president, for 25 years. He's kind and considerate, and we've enjoyed peaceful days together. Thanks to him, I've been able to recover from days of sorrow. Interestingly, we both remarried. We both lost our previous spouses to illness and carried the weight of sadness while raising children alone. At that time, my daughter Amy was 10 years old, and Oscar, my husband's son, was 3 years old. My husband and I met through work, and our similar circumstances led us to naturally become close. Since Oscar was still very young, he didn't seem to understand that he had lost his biological mother or that he wasn't biologically related to me. After we got married, he quickly bonded with my daughter and they lived together as if they were real siblings. We were a happy and joyful family, but everything changed when Oscar entered junior high school. Up until then, Oscar had grown up believing that I was his biological mother. However, he learned the truth from a tactless relative.
So you were pretending to be my mother, even though you're just a stranger?
I didn't mean for it to be like that. I was going to tell you when you got older, and I've always cared deeply about you.
They're just words. You're just a liar.
After that, Oscar continued to rebel against me and went through a rough period. However, he finally settled down around the time he graduated from university and joined my husband's company. It seemed that being told by my husband that he would groom him as his successor gave him encouragement.
Mom, I was wrong. I'm going to turn over a new leaf and do my best from now on.
I still remember feeling relieved as I watched my son say this with shining eyes. Meanwhile, Amy, who had started working at my husband's company earlier, married her colleague John. He is a smart and capable person who excels at his job. Both my husband and I felt reassured knowing our daughter was in good hands with John. Shortly after, Amy became pregnant, and we eagerly awaited the birth of our grandchild. However, an unexpected tragedy struck our family. Amy passed away due to complications from a difficult childbirth, succumbing to severe bleeding. Her last words, almost like a whisper, were, "Please take care of the baby." Oh no. Amy. I couldn't accept the fact my daughter passed away and was frozen in disbelief. During that difficult time, my son Oscar gently comforted me.
Mom, stay strong. I'm here for you.
I wanted to be by the side of the child my daughter had brought into the world, but my son-in-law insisted on raising the child by himself. Raising a child on your own is tough. Besides, you have a job. Can't we at least help out while the baby is still little?
Thank you. But Amy took my hand and asked me to take care of the baby. I'll do my best.
But I suggested it with good intentions, but John firmly refused my help. Unable to insist against his decision, I chose to silently watch over them. My granddaughter was named Olivia and she grew up lively and healthy, despite my worries, reaching the age of 4. She was an adorable child who resembled Amy. Around that time, John started occasionally leaving Olivia with us. He didn't stay with us often, citing his busy schedule, but we were always happy to see our granddaughter whenever we could. Sometimes when John came to pick Olivia up, I could smell alcohol on him, but I assumed he had social obligations. My husband and I were too focused on our granddaughter to worry much about it. Olivia is growing up so pure and sweet.
It's like young Amy has come back to us. She's adorable.
My husband adored our granddaughter so much that he cherished every moment with her, playing hide and seek and tag. The sorrow of losing Amy never faded, no matter how much time passed, but spending time with Olivia helped heal that pain. However, something happened that would plunge me back into the depths of despair. That morning, while getting ready for work, my husband made an unusual request for dinner.
I'd love some fried chicken tonight. You make it so delicious.
Oh, thank you. With such praise, I'll have to put extra effort into it. Look forward to it.
Great, I'm counting on you. Well, I'm off.
Take care. Have a good day. Little did I realize that such a trivial conversation would be our last. Later in the afternoon, as I was preparing to go grocery shopping for dinner, my son-in-law called.
Please stay calm and listen.
What? What's wrong?
Your husband has passed away.
What? My husband suddenly passed away. He fell from the rooftop of a newly completed 5-story apartment building constructed by his company. My son-in-law John was the first to discover him. Apparently, just before the incident, my husband had sent a text to John.
He texted me saying, "There's something I'm concerned about in the new apartment. Can you come and check?" So I went, and that's when I found your husband lying there, bleeding from his head.
Oh no.
I called an ambulance, but it was too late.
I rushed to the hospital by taxi, but instead of being guided to a hospital room, I was directed to the morgue. I desperately called out to my husband, who was cold and covered in a white sheet. "Please. Open your eyes." Feeling lost and in tears, Oscar, who arrived later, held me tightly in his arms.
Dad, if you had any worries, you should have talked to us. It's not good to keep things to yourself.
What? According to the police investigation, his shoes were found neatly arranged on the rooftop, and statements from those involved revealed that my husband had been troubled. It was concluded that he had taken his own life. However, there were no signs of such behavior from my husband, and I can't imagine him leaving me and taking his own life like that. I thought we trusted each other and shared everything. Was that just my belief? Left on the brink of despair, with no energy to even prepare for the funeral, I was grateful that Oscar and John stepped in and took care of everything. And then, on the day of the funeral, since there was some time before the service began, Oscar was greeting business associates near the entrance. I was sitting with John and our granddaughter in the family section, but Olivia, who had been glancing at her grandfather's photo, suddenly stood up and exclaimed,
"Grandpa says he has something to tell Grandma."
At that moment, I was taken aback. In fact, my granddaughter had a mysterious ability. I first noticed it when she was 2 years old. When we took her to visit Amy's grave, she exclaimed, "Mommy," and started chatting as if she could see her mother right there. Moreover, the details my granddaughter mentioned were things she couldn't possibly have known, so both my husband and son-in-law got shocked. When she was 3 years old, something similar happened.
"The old lady next door is saying to help the dog."
Olivia suddenly said this. The elderly woman she mentioned had passed away a week earlier, so I found it strange, but I decided to check her house, and found a dog chained up and had been barely moving inside its doghouse. It seemed that my granddaughter had the ability to communicate with the deceased. However, John denied it.
It's just a series of coincidences. Olivia simply enjoys her imagination. Please don't mention this to anyone else.
Of course, I had no intention of sharing this with anyone, but I strongly believed in Olivia's abilities. I'm sure Olivia can see my husband. I thought to myself, unable to sit still. I took her hand to take her to a quiet room where we could talk more. However, my son-in-law stopped me firmly.
It's before the funeral. We can talk later.
He usually was gentle, but now he had a stern expression and looked pale. John tried to take Olivia to his side, but she resisted and didn't leave my side. Holding Olivia's hand, I gazed at my husband's photo and spoke to him in my mind. "You have something to tell me, don't you?" That's right. He couldn't have taken his own life. My husband left for work with his usual gentle smile, even making a dinner request. There was no suicide note, and it didn't make any sense he's gone like that. As I pondered these thoughts, Oscar, who had been greeting attendees, approached the family seats. However, my attention was fixed on John, who seemed tense at that moment. Just then, Oscar called out to John, and the two went outside to smoke. Seeing an opportunity, I took Olivia to the waiting room and finally had a chance to hear her out. The words that came from my granddaughter's mouth were not something a 4-year-old would say, and it was clear that my husband was communicating to me through her. Moreover, it was unbelievably horrifying. I can't believe he's... I was shocked to my core, but Olivia continued with even more astonishing words.
"Grandma, you're being targeted too. Grandpa says you need to run away quickly."
Upon hearing this, a chilling tremor ran through my entire body, prompting me to quickly seek refuge with the police. However, upon further reflection, I realized there was no evidence to support Olivia's story. I believe in my granddaughter's mysterious abilities, but I don't think the police would take it seriously. Besides, it would be troublesome if negative rumors about Olivia spread. However, I cannot let the person who harmed my husband get away with it. I will never forgive them. With determination, I returned to the venue. After that, many people who had connections with my husband gathered at the funeral to pay their respects. Then, during the time for the eulogy, Oscar stood before everyone, tears streaming down his face.
My father was a kind and reliable business leader. It's heartbreaking to see him gone like this. I wish I had noticed his struggles sooner. Dad, I'm sorry. I'll take care of the company from now on.
Oscar struggled to speak through sobs, and the sound of weeping from attendees began to fill the room. At that moment, I made up my mind and stood up, and asked the host for the microphone. Thank you all for taking the time to come here today for my husband. He's saying he has something to tell everyone, so I will speak on his behalf.
Hey, Mom. What's going on? Are you okay?
My son-in-law stared at Oscar with a fearful expression as he spoke to me in concern. As Olivia ran over to me and held my hand, the attendees began murmuring, "Speak on behalf of the deceased president? Is she delusional?" I raised my voice loudly to cut through the commotion in the room. My husband did not take his own life. He was pushed from the rooftop of the apartment building by someone. The shocking words that came out of my mouth instantly froze everyone in the room. "It was you," I shouted, pointing at the person. It was Oscar.
What are you talking about?
Amidst the chaos of the bewildered attendees, my son's calm expression suddenly turned into the face of a villain.
Are you trying to frame me?
Oscar continued to shout afterward, claiming that because I was his stepmother, my aim was to secure the inheritance for Olivia, who is my daughter's child. Upon hearing this, the attendees collectively looked at me with disapproval.
That's terrible. Just because there's no blood relation, accusing him like that.
Whispered voices murmured around me. Feeling that everyone in the room was on his side, Oscar smirked and continued to press me further.
The police concluded that Dad was tormented and took his own life. I'm innocent.
There was no evidence that my husband was tormented. You were the only one who testified that to the police.
Dad told me so. He said he couldn't bear to live anymore. He spoke his mind only to me. And his shoes were neatly lined up on the rooftop.
Oscar's face turned bright red, his eyes widened, and he raised his voice angrily, spitting as he spoke. I know the reason he took off his shoes on the rooftop. He told me about it.
What? What do you mean?
Then, I began to recount the circumstances my husband died, which I had heard from Olivia. It was my son who had invited my husband out to see the completed apartment that day.
Thanks to you, Dad, I've grown up. Let's wrestle like we used to.
When they got to the rooftop, he took off his shoes and encouraged my husband to do the same. At first, my husband was bewildered by the sudden invitation, but he fondly remembered playing like that with his son when he was a child and agreed to join Oscar. Later, after pushing my husband off the rooftop, Oscar arranged his shoes neatly to make it appear as though my husband had jumped on his own. After confirming that his father had stopped breathing, my son sent a text from my husband's phone to John saying, "Come to the new apartment right away." Upon hearing my account, Oscar turned pale, and his lips trembled.
Why would you know about that? Only Dad should have known.
My husband is here, and he's angry at you. You're coming after me next, aren't you? As Oscar realized I knew everything, sweat poured from his forehead.
Dad, are you really here? But I had no choice. Because it's his fault.
Resigned to his fate, my son began to confess everything that had happened. In truth, my husband had assessed that Oscar lacked the capability to run the business. He had informed both John and Oscar that he intended John to be his successor, with Oscar placed under him. However, unable to accept this decision, my son had plotted and carried out a plan to eliminate both my husband and me. Amy and I both thought of you as a true family, so this is really disappointing. I've recorded everything you just said, so I'm going to submit it to the police as evidence.
What? I'm not letting you do that.
Enraged, Oscar tried to strike me, but immediately after, it was my son who screamed in pain.
Ow! Let go of me.
It was John who had twisted his arm and stopped him.
He told me that he was entrusting me with the company and his son. I was planning to pass the presidency to Oscar once he grew into the role of CEO.
Despite saying that, my son-in-law seemed wary of Oscar. He sensed something amiss in Oscar's actions and behavior, suspecting that he might be up to something nefarious. Upon hearing Olivia's words at the funeral, John realized his suspicions might be true. John had tensed up at that time for that very reason.
Hand over the presidency. Don't lie. You're planning to take over both the company and the inheritance. Everyone wants money, right?
Someone among the attendees must have called the police, as they entered the venue at that moment. Suddenly, Oscar's eyes welled up with tears, and he clung to me.
Please, help me. We're family, right?
What? How can you even say that? Besides, I'm cutting all ties with you. Whatever happens to you is no longer my concern.
Hey! Don't be so cold. Please. Just don't let the police take me.
Make sure you pay for your crimes. As I spoke these words coldly, Oscar seemed to realize that nothing he said would change my mind. He collapsed to his knees. Afterwards, he was found guilty and sent behind bars. By taking my husband's life, he forfeited any rights to inherit the company or its assets. There was no one among the relatives to support him. Even if he were to return to the outside world, he would live a tough life. Meanwhile, I am now living with my granddaughter and son-in-law. Thanks to the adorable Olivia, who is growing up healthy, I am slowly regaining my spirits. Today, I placed freshly made fried chicken, which my husband loved, in front of his photograph, and talked to him. Thank you. I'm doing